I was house sitting for my grandma one weekend while she traveled to Florida with some friends from church. I slept in the guest bedroom next to her room, which always had two twin beds. My brother and I used to sleep in them during our sleepovers at her house. I chose the bed next to the window, but before settling in, I made sure all the doors were locked. After getting into bed, I realized it was still early, and I didn't fall asleep right away. There wasn't much to do at my grandma's house, so I spent an hour or two on my phone, watching videos and texting friends. Then I thought I heard a woman's voice outside saying hello. Curious, I left the bedroom and cautiously approached the front door, trying to listen. The voice continued, repeating hello every 10 seconds. As I got closer, I realized it was indeed coming from outside. My grandma's door didn't have a peephole, but the dining room windows provided a clear view of the front porch. I tiptoed over to the window to see who was out there. I tried to peek through the plastic blinds without being obvious, but I must not have done a great job because when I looked, I saw a woman on the stoop, staring directly at me with an unnerving smile. She was older, perhaps in her late 50s or early 60s, but she didn't look like a sweet, innocent grandma. Something about her face sent chills down my spine. I stepped back from the window, wondering if she might be one of my grandma's friends. But it was midnight. Why would anyone come to the door so late without knocking or ringing the bell? Why was she just standing there repeating, hello? I felt genuinely unsettled. I returned to the guest bedroom and shut the door. With the door closed, I could no longer hear her voice. Maybe she had left. I texted my sisters and friends about the bizarre encounter, but as time passed in silence, I started to calm down. My sisters suggested I call my grandma, but I knew there was no chance she would be awake. She rarely checked her phone anyway. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a loud banging on the window. Not a light knock or tap, but a fierce bang. My heart raced as I slipped into fight or flight mode. Just after the banging stopped, I heard that same voice say, hello. Fueled by adrenaline, I grabbed the blinds and pushed them up. There she was, that horrifying older woman, only a thin layer of glass between us. I screamed at her, "I'm calling the cops!" Then I yanked the blinds down and dashed back to the living room. I scanned the house and then sprinted upstairs to lock myself in the guest bedroom. I didn't want to call the police. I just wanted to ride it out. I crawled under the covers, still shaken. A couple of hours later, I was still awake, so I decided to check outside again. Thankfully, the creepy old lady seemed to be gone. The next morning, I called my grandma to tell her what had happened. She panicked, yelling into the phone. A few days earlier, she had noticed a woman about 10 years younger than her, watching her in the grocery store, smiling for no reason. I tried to calm her down, unsure if the two incidents were connected. But her frantic voice gave me chills, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was the same woman. My name is Nicholas, and I'm currently a freshman at Syracuse University, which isn't exactly in the safest area. After going through a breakup with my first girlfriend, I decided to re-enter the online dating scene. While using the app Hinge, I connected with a blonde girl named Stephanie, who also attended Syracuse. We shared interests in reading and movies, and even had the same sense of humor. I suggested a movie date, and she agreed, telling me to meet her at a specific location near campus, where she would pick me up. Around 9 o'clock, I waited on a corner in a typical neighborhood block. She asked me to share my location, which I did. A few minutes later, a car turned down the street and stopped in front of me. I was surprised to see an older man, not Stephanie, roll down the window. He asked why I was alone, which felt very strange. When I told him I was waiting for someone, he asked if it was Stephanie. I replied yes, and he claimed to be her father, inviting me to hop in for a ride to her. I scrutinized him closely. He looked too old to be her father. I was cautious and firmly asked why he hadn't informed me he would be picking me up. He said he didn't trust a random guy meeting his daughter and wanted to meet me first. Feeling uneasy, I turned and walked away. He yelled after me, surprised by my sudden departure, but I had heard too many kidnapping stories to take any risks. I glanced back to ensure he wasn't following me, and I felt relief as he drove straight ahead and turned left out of sight. Continuing towards campus, I reached a corner and was about to turn when I spotted what looked like the same car parked on the side of the road with its lights off. Trying not to appear suspicious, I walked past while glancing into the tinted windows. I received a text from Stephanie asking why I hadn't gotten into the car with her dad. Ignoring the message, I kept walking and looked back occasionally to see if the car would move. When I reached an intersection, I turned right and began to run toward campus. To my surprise, I wasn't followed. Out of breath, I arrived back on campus and headed toward my dorm. However, I felt like someone was following me. I dismissed it as paranoia until I heard a piece of broken glass crunching under someone's shoe. Realizing I was being tailed, I ducked behind a van to listen for footsteps. They were a few cars away, but I remembered I hadn't stopped sharing my location with Stephanie or that man. Suddenly, I spotted him approaching from between two cars. He yelled something I couldn't fully make out, but it sounded like, "Come back, and I'll take you to her." He looked to be in his 60s, and I knew I could easily outrun him. I bolted, losing him quickly, and made it back to my dorm room. My roommate wasn't there, so I had no one to confide in. As I lay in bed, I received another text from that man, shocking me. It read, "You're a little piece of fucking shit. You're lucky you got away. I would have strangled your ugly ass." I took a screenshot of the message. I replied, thanking him for the threat and letting him know I'd report it to the police. Then I blocked his number. I saved the conversation as evidence and planned to report it eventually, hoping the police could take action. When I was 18, I worked part-time as a janitor at my high school over the summer. My shifts varied, sometimes during the day and sometimes at night, from 9 a.m. to midnight, depending on my financial needs. Often I was left to lock up the building after the older janitors had gone home. This was before the school installed cameras in every hallway. One night, my supervisor, Tom, had to leave early, so I finished my shift alone and locked up for the night. He told me to text him if I needed anything, as usual, and then he left. I enjoyed working alone because I could often finish my task quickly and then spend the rest of my shift on my phone or leave early while still getting paid. Before leaving, Tom asked me to bring all the extra chairs from the gymnasium down to the basement storage room. I figured I'd do that and then head home. I grabbed a stack of 6 chairs and carried them down to the basement. The storage room was dimly lit and felt more like a warehouse basement than a school. As I dropped the chairs where the others were stored, I noticed several art mannequins covered with paint cloths. I went back up to the gym to get more chairs. When I returned to the basement, I saw that one of the mannequins was exposed. The cloth had been removed. I knew it had been covered just minutes earlier because it was one of the front mannequins. I texted Tom saying, "I think someone's down in the basement." He replied, "What do you mean?" I explained that one of the art cloths had been moved. He took a moment to respond, saying no one else should be there. Then I noticed something. An art cloth tucked in the corner of the storage room, sitting outside the dim light. It was covering something, and I realized that whatever was under it was moving slightly. Terrified, I ran back upstairs and locked the basement door. I texted Tom again, saying someone was hiding under a cloth in the basement. He told me to call the cops, but I insisted he return since he had just left 10 minutes earlier. He refused, telling me to confront whoever was down there. So I went back down to the basement. However, when I got there, the cloth was flat on the floor. The person hiding was gone, but then I heard loud metallic thumps coming from above me. I looked up to see indents forming in the large air vents overhead. Someone was crawling through the vent directly above me and had stopped. I was terrified. I ran up the stairs, locked the school up, and went home. The next day, I told Tom a partial truth, that I thought I saw someone in the corner, but it was gone when I returned. Thankfully, it was my last week there, so I didn't have to worry about it anymore.